To the Point with Kelly Dunn and Michael Williams.
The candidates have held center stage, but now the voters will be speaking. When Florida's primary is over at the end of the month, we should have a good idea who will be the Republicans' choice to take on President Obama. Good morning and Happy New Year. Michael Williams is off today. For months, we have been hearing from the presidential contenders, but now we're about to start hearing from the voters. This is going to be a busy and critical month for the candidates. In 2 days, it is the Iowa caucuses. Then it's on to New Hampshire, South Carolina. And January 31st, the registered Republicans will be voting in Florida. Joining me to take a look at the upcoming political events and what we should be keeping an eye out for, News Channel 5 political analyst and coordinator of the American Studies program at Lynn University, Dr. Robert Watson, and Brian Crowley, author of CrowleyPoliticalReport.com. Gentlemen, thank you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Well, let's get to the point. We hear people say all the time that Iowa and New Hampshire have too much influence over the outcome of our presidential primaries. Can the same thing, though, be said about Florida's?
Well, I mean, the big difference is in Iowa, when they get done with the caucuses this week, they don't pick any delegates.
Right.
It's just a dog and pony show, and the only reason the candidates show up is because we all show up, and we have for decades now. So there's no place, but it's a media show. New Hampshire is a little bit more legitimate in its primary process because they actually, will select delegates out of this process, but. What a lot of people don't know about New Hampshire and South Carolina is that those states are not closed primaries. The one real test of what Republicans want is the Florida primary, where it's a closed primary and only Republicans can vote in it. In New Hampshire, if you're an independent, you can vote in the Republican primary. And I've never, frankly, really understood a system that allowed people that are not a member of the party to vote in it. But we're going to learn a lot over the next 4 weeks.
Well, we used to be one of the Super Tuesday states, and now, of course, now we're early, January 31st.
Well, Florida's front-loaded again.
Right.
The Democrats did it 4 years ago and were penalized. The National Party set the primary calendar, and they don't want too many states moving up too early. Then you move from retail politics, where you're pressing the flesh and meeting people, to wholesale politics, where you're just running 30-second commercials and jetting around to many states. Florida did it 4 years ago and was penalized, and Florida didn't learn its lesson, and now the Florida Republican Party did it and moved it up, and now instead of Florida having 99 or 100 delegates, they only get 50, so they've been stripped half of its delegates. Florida has become my buzzword. But I like Iowa. I agree with Brian's assessment of Iowa and the caucus, but here's what I like about the caucus. Nobody really knows what a caucus is. It's an old Indian word that means kind of a gathering, and you kind of gas the buses up, and you bring the voters out to vote for you. You have a bluegrass band, you get some good home cooking, and you sit around and you're talking. At the end of the day, they kind of decide who they're going to support. But here's what I do like about it. It's grassroots. People get engaged. It's grassroots. It's not just casting a vote with a ballot. It's getting engaged in the process and system, which means Iowa benefits those candidates who are on the ground, who have a good apparatus. So someone like Newt Gingrich, without a lot of money, could be hurt there, even though he's been leading in some of the polls. Someone like Ron Paul, who's not polling well elsewhere, but has a rabid following in a place like Iowa, or Rick Santorum may get 3 or 4% more than he's been polling because of the Christian evangelical community who will get in those buses and come out that day. So it's a different kind of race. And if, for example, in 2008, Barack Obama had the organization, Hillary did not. Obama beat Hillary in all but one of the caucuses, which is ultimately what gave him the Democratic nomination.
You brought up Newt Gingrich, though, and he'll be in our area 3 days before our primary, speaking in Martin and Palm Beach counties. At this point, his organization in Florida is not as big as Mitt Romney's. How big of a factor, though, do you think this will play in the Florida primary?
I think it will. I mean, obviously you can run 30-second commercials, that wholesale politics, but there's no substitute for get out the vote, neighborhood walking, phone banking, knocking on doors, having that grassroots. And in a state like Florida, where East Florida is not West Florida, North Florida is not South Florida, it's a very diverse, large, difficult state. You need volunteers, you need offices, you need that campaign organization. Newt simply has not had the money, whereas Romney has had the money and has been making headway into the critical Latino vote. You would think that would benefit Romney if this election is like it's been in previous years. But it's one of those years with social media. And who's up this week is down next week. So.
That you can't write it in permanent marker because it'll change by the next time you try to go back to that one name that was the front runner. I mean, what do you think about the Gingrich-Romney comparisons in Florida?
Well, Gingrich, as we enter the new year has beefed up his Florida apparatus, and he's brought on a whole, county a chairman in most of the major counties, and he's hired some senior staff to work in Florida for him. So, you know, Gingrich clearly understands that come January 31st, he must do well, if not win this primary. No matter what happens in the 3 states prior to Florida, the media attention will quickly focus on who wins Florida. It will be seen as the first big mega state. It will be seen as the first state that has the diverse population that we have. And it will be seen as, you know, a huge impact on who is going to be the nominee. So I think that we're going to see a lot of action here in the state over the next 4 weeks.
I've been saying that I think Florida will be the kingmaker in the Republican primary. We always say the road to the White House runs through Florida. In the last 3 elections, it pretty much has. But I think the primary race, Florida's going to be the key state, and here's why. Brian's right. The earlier states, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Iowa, with all due respect, they're not large key swing states. Florida's the first big state, the first real diverse state. It's a state that's large enough it can push a candidate over the threshold. Secondly, one candidate will not win all 3 of the early contests. So we'll be coming into Florida with a mixed record of some would have won, some would have lost. And thirdly, it's not a winner-take-all situation in the early primaries, not until after April 1st. So you don't have a winner-take-all, you have a proportional allocation. So if Romney beats Newt only by a little in New Hampshire, for example, they split the vote. If Ron Paul gets a good showing, maybe second place, he splits the vote. So everyone's going to be coming into Florida with delegates. So Florida, I think, will be the kingmaker in the Republican primary.
Let's talk about the Tea Party. In April, we saw the big turnout for the Donald Trump event when he was talking about running for president at that time. Primary still a few weeks away. How do you see the Tea Party vote shaking out?
Well, I think the Tea Party vote in Florida especially is going to be critical. It'll be critical in the other states as well, but all you have to do is look at the U.S. Senate candidates in this state, and they are, and we've talked about this on the show before, you know, they're working very hard to get the Tea Party vote. It's what helped Marco Rubio defeat Charlie Crist. The Tea Party in this state is very strong, will have a lot of influence on this election. The fact of the matter is the turnout on January 31st will probably be light to moderate. And those people who will turn out will be the activists, like the Tea Party activists. They also have a very clear agenda. They have certain things that they expect of these candidates. They tend to be unrelenting in what they expect of these candidates. The Tea Party is largely a no party, I mean, a no compromise group. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, and I think that's my phone ringing. To add to the cold that I had for this.
Santa wants that stocking stuffer back.
That's right.
He wants that back from, you know, I agree with Brian. 2 names, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott. Tea Party put those 2 folks on the map. They've proven their power in Florida. They can make and break elections here in Florida. I will say this, however. I think the enthusiasm for the Tea Party has dampened a bit. And I think the Tea Party is not as powerful today as it was 2 years ago. Part of the gridlock in Congress, the public frustration with not getting anything done, although that's been part of the Tea Party's agenda, I think it's wearing thin among all but the most resolute members of the party. So I believe they will play a role, but I don't think they're what they were 2 years ago.
Without an opponent right now, President Obama's not getting a whole lot of political attention in Florida. 4 years ago, he did carry the state. How does it look for the president winning in Florida again? What do you think right now? And, you know, it's still a long way out, but...
I think on January 1st, it looks like a very difficult year for President Obama in this state. I don't think it's not possible for him to win. We've talked again on the show in the past. We've commented about, you know, the fact that I, for one, don't feel like he's spent much time in this state since he was elected. You have to work this state. He's, you know, I think that... his strategy of the last 4 to 6 weeks has been interesting. He seems to be less out front on issues as far as, you know, having constant press conferences and things like that. And I think that's helped him a little bit, and he's gotten small bumps in the polls. But this is a state that traditionally votes for Republicans. It very rarely votes for a Democratic presidential candidate. So I think it's going to be very difficult for Obama if the economy doesn't improve dramatically over the next 9 months.
And I just can't imagine what could happen between now and November to improve the economy. So he will have a weak economy on Election Day. The other thing that's going to hurt President Obama is the Florida Democratic Party is so weak. So he doesn't have a really well-greased, well-organized Democratic machine in all 67 counties and every municipality. So he's pretty much going to have to do like he did last time, run it on his own. He will have the money, I predict, which could make a difference. He's a great campaigner. We can't underestimate his ability to campaign. But he's got a good organization nationally. He will have the organization in Florida. I think the key is this. Obama can win the White House and not win Florida. But it sure would be a lot easier for him if he wins Florida. Florida will probably be the key swing state once again. So if he wins Florida, I see a lot of easy paths for him for re-election. If he loses Florida, he still could, but it's going to be an uphill battle.
Tough.
Well, one of the major issues 4 years ago, of course, was the war in Iraq. Now it is over. U.S. troops are home. Florida is the home to a lot of military veterans. How big of a player is that when you mix that into everything?
The interesting thing about the return of the troops from Iraq is that rather than a time of celebration, it becomes another time of controversy. I think we're in a very argumentative mood in this country these days. And, there are some people who argue that the troops should have stayed there longer. There's some people who argue that the troops should have come back sooner. But the fact of the matter is the troops are back. We should applaud the fact that the troops are back and we don't have people in harm's way. We lost an awful lot of men and women in that war. History will tell us whether or not it was worth it. But, I fear that, that we just can't seem to agree on anything these days. And it's sort of sad that the troops coming back have to come back in this kind of a controversy. It's certainly not as bad as it was during the Vietnam War, but at least they're being greeted back as heroes as opposed to, but it's really kind of disturbing that we just can't agree on anything.
It really is. In this show last week, I said that the way Time magazine has a Person of the Year, my Person of the Year was the American soldier. They did what was asked for them in an impossible situation in Iraq, and after that long, brutal conflict, they're back. But historically, it's amazing. Every time we've ended a war, brought soldiers back, with the exception of Vietnam, there's been great applause. The president has got a major bounce. Obama didn't get a bounce. He got no love for fulfilling this campaign promise. He got no support. He got no. In fact, there wasn't hardly even a media story. We're talking about Lindsay Lohan and the Kardashians. Instead of the soldiers coming back from Iraq. So I mean, what a poor state of politics we have that we haven't been able to take time out of this partisan bickering, whether you like the president or not, but to congratulate the soldiers, appreciate what they've done, and appreciate what the president has done. It wasn't even a story at the end of 2011. Quite shocking.
Coming up next, he was a political newcomer who is having a big influence on Florida. Take a guess at who we're talking about, and we'll have the answer when we come back. Rick Scott is finishing off his first year as Florida governor. His poll numbers are low, but it's not unusual for a governor to have a difficult first year. Brian, you have covered a lot of Florida governors. How does it compare with others and their first year in office?
He's kind of unique. Well, I mean, let's start from the fact that he entered public office without any experience in public office. So we haven't had a governor like that in many, many, many a decade. And I think, I was listening to him last week during on Channel 5 doing an interview with the Capitol's Mike Vassalinda, and he almost admits that he entered office a little naive. That he sort of says during the interview, "Golly, it's certainly a lot faster than I thought it was going to be," and I think he thought he could just walk in there and do these XYZ things, and it would just sort of happen because he, and I think, but I also see some policies aside, whether you agree with him on policy or not, I see some positive things in his last 6 months as governor. He seems to understand the office better. He hired a new chief of staff with a lot of legislative experience, a former chief of staff to Mike Herodopoulos, the Senate president. Steve McNamara, and you can already see changes. He's much more open to the media. There's less, he's more responsive to citizens and to the folks out there. So I see some positive ways in the way he's trying to deal with people. The policies, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, any way you cut it, he had a bad year. Rick Scott did not have a good year. Polling showed that he was the least popular governor in the United States. And I think Brian's right. His inexperience showed. In fact, it wasn't the Democrats who were giving him problems and keeping him up at night. It was his own Republican Party. He went into this office with a veto-proof supermajority in both state houses, and yet it was pushback from his own party because he showed that he does not know how to work within the system. It's that no-compromise mentality. It doesn't work so well. The governor has not kept on track with the 700,000 jobs in 7 years. He did get a major education bill through, although calling for 10% cuts in education his first year. It was pared back to 8, but the school system's struggling. That's probably not the way to do it. But I do think the big question is going to be, did he learn from all that? Like Brian, I've seen some signs that he's taking some baby steps in the right direction. But the good news for the governor, there's almost nowhere to go but up from here.
Well, in some fairness to him, you know, this is a guy who came in with the mantra about these 700,000 jobs.
700,000 in 7 years,
and,
right.
you know, I've talked to business people out there, and I talked to the British ambassador, as we talked about on the show a month ago, and he met with the governor, and this guy is on the phone to business people around the country and overseas every day selling Florida. So, you know, that part of his business skill set, I think, is really important in this state that has, you know, over 10% unemployment, and in some counties we still have, you know, much higher unemployment. So, I mean, he hasn't lost sight of that vision. You know, in his new budget, he wants to now raise education by $1 billion. He's doubled what he recommended for Everglades restoration the last time. So, I mean, I think he's seeing that he has to make some changes in order to get that poll numbers up. But it also shows that they were very slow to learn that when you go that deep into the toilet, to be able to get back up is very, very hard.
I think he made the classic mistake. He surrounded himself with people, sycophants and amateurs, not people with that kind of experience, which he's starting to change slowly. So.
Coming up, it is the one issue none of the candidates can control, and it could end up controlling the outcome of the election. We'll tell you about that when we return. In the words of the Clinton campaign when he was running for president, it's the economy, stupid. And this year it could be an even larger issue. The economy in Florida continues to struggle with double-digit unemployment. Plus, this year we have the 99 percenters versus the 1%ers. So we know it is the issue in presidential politics too. But how about in other races? Is this the defining issue?
Oh, absolutely. If you're running for the Senate in this state, or any state, if you're running for Congress in this state, especially those offices, you know, the economy is number one. Everything else is about everything else, you know, plays a distant second to the economy. You know, we don't know what 2012 is going to look like in the economy. There are some hints that it's going to be a little better, but we heard those hints at the start of 2011. So I think, you know, people enter 2012 still unsure about where the economy is going to be. You know, Congress is constantly bickering with each other, which is unsettling to the markets, unsettling to businesses that are trying to make decisions based on federal law, whether it's the payroll tax or just the federal budget overall. They're trying to make you know, decisions on how to run their businesses, and they can't. They can't do any long-term planning because of this dysfunction that we have in Washington.
Absolutely. You know, various leaders have said something to the effect of, when things go right, we admit that you as a leader get entirely too much credit. But when things go wrong, we know that you as the leader get entirely too much blame. So I suspect Obama would agree with his predecessors in that he's being blamed for Bush's economy. But, you know, when you're in office, you own it. It's yours, you own it. And it will be, I think, jobs will be the single biggest issue, probably from local races all the way up through all across the country this year. You know, oftentimes national security, war has been a major issue. We've seen with the ending of Iraq and a changed phase in Afghanistan, and maybe the end in sight. We've seen that it's not polling as one of the top 2 or 3 issues. It's jobs, it's unemployment.
So are incumbents more in danger than ever?
I think so. I think this could be. I think, you know, when the economy's bad, it hurts the incumbents, obviously, because all the challenger has to do is say, are you better now than you were 4 years ago? The classic Reagan line, which most politicians have used something to that effect. I think that next year, this year, we could see in November one of the biggest changes in terms of incumbents losing. Or, you know, back in the 80s, we had, you know, 96, 90, percent re-election rates. You were more likely to die in office than be defeated. I think we could see a big sea change. The public is angry. There's an anti-incumbent mood. Anybody but the bum. I think if none of the above was on the ballot, they would win all around the country. And with the economy, so I think this could be, and the incumbents are mindful of that. There are.
Exactly. All right, we'll be back in a moment. We'll have a Crowley closer coming up in a second. Going to wrap it up real quick. We'll begin with Watson's wrap-up.
Well, we have a major election coming up in November. Here's my concern. We as a country are probably more divided today than any time since the 60s. That would be the 1860s and the Civil War. And yet we are going to consume billions of dollars as a country in negative attack ads in the upcoming year. I worry about the sense of civility, and we all have to keep in mind that these ads are typically full of lies.
Well, sadly, we start out the new year with Leo, the man who operates the cameras and does the countdown. There he is waving at the other end behind the camera, as always. He's leaving the station, and we certainly wish Leo well.
Certainly do.
Despite Kelly's demand, I did not wear my sash today because I am a New Year's baby.
You are?
I am.
See, how did I not know this? Where our research staff? What happened?
So is my
Our
brother.
staff.
Happy birthday to Stalin,
So is my nephew.
Best of luck
Boy,
to
we have
Leo.
a lot of New Year's babies. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy New Year to you. And
39.
Thank you. Again, thanks for joining us on To The Point. Bye-bye.